My cousin thought it would be funny to keep bringing up the fact that she used to date my husband, right up until the moment he decided to publicly remind her exactly why he dumped her. So, here I am, the night before my wedding, and my entire world feels like it's about to implode because of a single unavoidable person. My cousin, Isabel, has been the proverbial thorn in my side since we were teenagers. But I never imagined she would go this far. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a happy, relaxed event, a final calm before the beautiful storm of the wedding day. Instead, it became a battleground, and my fiancé, David, launched the first and only missile. For context, I'm Lena, 29. The man I'm marrying tomorrow is David, 30. About 7 years ago, he had a very brief, completely insignificant thing with my cousin, Isabel, who is 27. They met at a mutual friend's party, went out for coffee a few times, and texted for a couple weeks before he realized they had zero chemistry and politely ended it. It was a non-event. Then, about 3 years later, he and I met at a work conference. The connection was instant and electric. We've been inseparable ever since. 052. We discovered the Isabel connection maybe 6 months into our relationship. David mentioned a girl named Isabel he'd briefly seen, and I just laughed, saying I had a cousin with the same name. A few exchanged details later, and we confirmed it was the same person. We shrugged it off. It was ancient history, and Isabel and I have never been close. She's always been competitive and, frankly, a bit mean-spirited. If it weren't for my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, who insisted on family unity, I would have cut ties with Isabel years ago. When it came to the wedding guest list, I was firm. Isabel was not invited, but my Aunt Carol launched a full-scale guilt campaign. She's your only cousin. Family is everything. How would it look? I was stressed with a million other wedding planning details, and I caved. I thought, how much trouble could she possibly cause? I have never been more wrong. From the moment she arrived for the wedding week activities, Isabel was insufferable. At the welcome barbecue, she jokingly mentioned how David's taste in women had clearly evolved. During the bridal shower, she sidled up to my friends and whispered about how different David seemed now compared to back when they were getting to know each other. She constantly used this vague, intimate language that suggested they'd had some profound romantic history, when in reality, it was a handful of lukewarm dates that fizzled out. David was as annoyed as I was. He found her behavior bizarre and embarrassing. We made a pact to ignore her. We thought if we didn't give her the reaction she so clearly craved, she would eventually get bored and stop. We were wrong. Her comments just got more pointed, more designed to get under my skin, to make me feel like I was getting her sloppy seconds, even though I was the one he was building a life with. The rehearsal dinner was at this beautiful, cozy Italian restaurant we'd booked out. The air was filled with the scent of garlic and rosemary, and everyone was laughing and happy. Then Isabel stood up with her wine glass for an unscheduled toast. She smiled a sickly sweet smile and said, "I just think it's so wonderful that Lena and David found each other. It's funny how life works out, isn't it? I'll always have a soft spot for David. Of course. He was my first real, well, I shouldn't say that here." She gave a theatrical little giggle, and the room went uncomfortably quiet. That was the last straw for David. I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch, and then he slowly put his napkin down on the table. He didn't raise his voice, but it carried across the entire room, cold and clear. "Isabel, you need to stop. This has been going on all week, and it's pathetic." Her smile vanished. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," David said, his voice steady. "There's a reason I stopped returning your texts after the third date. You became obsessive. You were talking about moving in together after knowing me for 2 weeks. You showed up at my office unannounced. I had to tell the security desk not to let you up. Do you remember that?" Isabel's face was a mask of shock and horror. People were staring, their forks frozen midair. David continued, relentless. The final straw was when you found my grandmother's number online and called her to ask for family recipes because you wanted to impress me. You scared my family, Isabel. You scared me. It wasn't a fling. It was a couple of dates that ended because you were, and clearly still are, deeply insecure and incapable of respecting boundaries. This act, this constant need to insert yourself into our lives, to try and diminish what Lena and I have, it's not funny. It's creepy. It reeks of desperation. A choked sob escaped Isabel's throat. She clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with humiliation. Then she burst into loud, messy tears, shoved her chair back so hard it fell over, and ran out of the restaurant. My Aunt Carol, her face pale and furious, shot me a look of pure venom before rushing out after her daughter. The rest of the dinner was a tense, awkward blur. My stomach was in knots. Part of me was vindicated. Finally, someone had said what needed to be said, but the other, larger part was filled with a cold dread. I knew my aunt. I knew this wasn't over. I was right. About an hour later, back at the hotel, my phone rang. It was Aunt Carol. She didn't even say hello. How could you let him humiliate her like that? In front of everyone. She's devastated. Aunt Carol. She's been humiliating me and provoking David all week. I tried to explain, my voice trembling. I don't care what she said. She's family. He had no right to speak to her that way. Your mother would be ashamed of you. That felt like a physical blow. If you and David don't apologize to Isabel, sincerely and in front of everyone tomorrow before the ceremony, then I will not be attending your wedding, and I will make sure everyone knows why. I felt the world tilt. My aunt had been a second mother to me after my own mom passed away 5 years ago. The thought of her not being there, of causing this huge family rift on my wedding day, was terrifying. But the idea of apologizing for something we didn't do, for something Isabel had orchestrated, made me feel sick with injustice. I got off the phone and collapsed into David's arms, sobbing. I was trapped. It was the night before my wedding, and I was being forced to choose between my dignity and my family. I didn't mention a lot of the family history in my initial panic, because I didn't think it was relevant, but maybe it is. My mom and Aunt Carol were incredibly close, true best friends. They married brothers, making them sisters-in-law as well as sisters in spirit. My dad and uncle ran a business together. We were the picture of a tight-knit family. My mom got sick when I was in college. It was a long, brutal fight, and Aunt Carol was a rock through all of it. She was also mine. After my mom died, Aunt Carol stepped in to fill the void. She helped me plan my graduation party. She gave me advice about my first job. She was the one I called when I got engaged. My dad, while loving, had retreated into his own grief and had started traveling extensively. So Aunt Carol became my primary touchstone in the family. Isabel, however, had always been a point of tension. She was the only child, used to being the center of attention, and she deeply resented the close relationship I had with her mother. She saw me as an intruder, someone who stole her mom's affection and time. There were snide comments throughout the years, little acts of sabotage, losing an invitation to a party, forgetting to pass on messages, but I always let it slide for Aunt Carol's sake. I understood, on some level, that it came from a place of insecurity. But this, with David, felt different. It felt malicious and calculated. David and I talked for hours that night. We went through every possible scenario. Apologizing felt like rewarding a bully. Not apologizing meant losing the closest thing I had to a mother figure. I was paralyzed. The next morning, my wedding day, I woke up with puffy eyes and a lead weight in my chest. I had a missed call from my dad, who was flying that morning, and a string of furious texts from cousins on Isabel's side, calling me a terrible person for ganging up on her. The narrative was already being twisted. I was the villain, and Isabel was the poor, heartbroken victim. My bridesmaids, my best friends from college, arrived to help me get ready, and I told them everything. They were livid. "She's been making everyone uncomfortable all week, Lena," my friend Sophia said. She was practically bragging about knowing David first. It was gross. David just said what everyone was thinking. "But my aunt," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Your aunt is blinded by being a mom," my other friend, Rachel, said gently. "She's protecting her child, even if her child is in the wrong. But that doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Not today." Their words solidified something in me. This was my wedding day. I had spent over a year planning it, dreaming of it. I was about to marry the most wonderful man who had only defended me and our relationship from a toxic, obsessive person. To betray him and myself with an apology would poison the very foundation of our marriage. I made a decision. I would not apologize. I called my Aunt Carol. "Have you come to your senses?" she asked, her voice cold. "I have," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "David, and I will not be apologizing to Isabel. Her behavior has been inappropriate and hurtful for days, and what happened last night was a direct consequence of her actions. We will not reward that. You are my family, and I love you deeply. It would break my heart if you weren't there today. But if you choose to stand with Isabel on this, if you choose to miss my wedding to make a point, then that is a choice you will have to live with. The door is open. I hope you walk through it." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then a quiet click. She had hung up. I sat there on the edge of the bed, the phone still in my hand, and cried. David held me, telling me he was proud of me, that I was strong. But all I felt was a profound sense of loss. The joy of the day felt dimmed. The hours blurred into a frenzy of hair, makeup, and putting on my dress. I was going through the motions, a beautiful, smiling mannequin with a shattered heart inside. My dad arrived, having heard the abbreviated version from me earlier. He was furious, not at me, but at the situation. He held my hands and said, "Your mother would have told Isabel to get lost and would have been the first one on the dance floor. Don't you forget that." It made me smile, a real smile, for the first time that day. It was almost time for the ceremony. I was standing with my dad in the vestibule of the beautiful, sunlit garden where we were getting married. I could hear the music playing. My stomach was a tight ball of nerves. I was mentally preparing to walk down the aisle and see an empty seat where my aunt should have been. And then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Aunt Carol. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she was there. She was dressed and she was there. "Lena," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Your mother would be so proud." A sob caught in my throat. "I am so sorry. I was a fool. I was so busy protecting my child that I forgot I had two." She glanced at my dad, who gave her a small, grateful nod. Isabel told me a different version of what happened last night. This morning, I finally caught a few of your friends. They told me everything. The constant comments, the jokes, the obsession. I am so ashamed I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. She took a deep breath. "I told Isabel she is not welcome at the wedding. She's at the hotel. We will deal with that later. Today is your day, and I would be honored to witness it if you'll still have me." The relief that washed over me was so powerful my knees felt weak. I threw my arms around her, my carefully applied makeup be damned. "Of course, I still want you here," I whispered into her shoulder. The ceremony was perfect. As I walked down the aisle on my dad's arm, I saw David waiting for me, his eyes full of love and pride. and I saw my Aunt Carol sitting in the front row, dabbing her eyes with tissue, giving me a watery smile. The weight was gone. The joy was back, brighter than ever. The reception was a blast. We laughed, we danced, we celebrated. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Aunt Carol stayed for the whole thing, even sharing a dance with my dad. It felt, for a few hours, like the family I remember from my childhood. The next few weeks, as we settled into married life, were a period of adjustment. Aunt Carol and I talked frequently. She was trying to navigate the fallout with Isabel, who was predictably furious with her for choosing my side. Apparently, Isabel had spun an elaborate tale where David was still secretly in love with her and had only attacked her out of repressed passion. Hearing that just confirmed how unwell she was. Aunt Carol put her in therapy, which was a positive step. About a month after the wedding, Aunt Carol came over for dinner. It was just her, me, and David. We had a wonderful, normal evening. After dessert, she grew quiet. "I need to tell you both something," she said, twisting her napkin in her hands. "Talking to Isabel's therapist and hearing some things from her, it's made me realize this pattern with her isn't new. There was a boy in high school she fixated on. He transferred schools. There was a college professor. We thought she was just having a hard time. We made excuses. I enabled her. I am so terribly sorry that you too had to bear the brunt of that. It was a painful but necessary confession. We forgave her. Truly, we could see her own pain and guilt. We agreed that for everyone's sake, especially Isabel's, we would maintain our distance from her. There would be no family holidays together, no forced interactions. It was a bittersweet resolution, but a sane one. 6 months later, David and I were in our new home, happily domesticated. My relationship with Aunt Carol was stronger than ever. It was based on honesty now, not on the idealized memory of my mother. She had stopped making excuses for Isabel, who was still in therapy and, according to my aunt, making slow, difficult progress. One evening, we were having a small barbecue in our backyard. It was just a few close friends, my dad and Aunt Carol. The air was filled with the smell of grilled food and the sound of laughter. As I looked around at our little circle, my husband, my father, my aunt, my friends, I felt a deep, profound sense of peace. David came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "Happy," he murmured. I leaned back into him, watching as my dad told a hilarious story that had Aunt Carol clutching her side with laughter. "Incredibly," I said, turning my head to kiss him. "It's perfect." The drama with Isabel felt like a lifetime ago, a dark cloud that had finally blown away. We had faced it together, held our ground, and protected the life we were building. The family that remained, the family that truly mattered, was here, laughing in our backyard. We had weathered the storm, and the sun on the other side was warmer than I ever could have imagined.